All right, so with the Oscars done, it is time for a new Oscar season to begin. So we are here to give way too early Best Picture predictions for next year's Oscars. Why? Because I hate myself. No, I'm just kidding. This is just a lot of fun. That's what this video is. It's me having fun, just trying to call what's going to happen a year from now. I'm inevitably going to get a lot wrong. I was only 3 out of 10 this early last year, gunning for 4 or 5 this time. But yeah, this is ultimately, like I said, just a video for me to have some fun and to also just throw out a whole list of movies that could potentially be in the awards conversation for next year. Some of which many people probably have not heard of before. So I'm not in the business of wasting your time. Let's get right into number one, where I am taking a big swing right away and going with Begonia, the new Yorgos Lanthimos film. And there are a lot of reasons to be hesitant about this film. I did not have it in my top 10 for a little bit because the plot just does not feel very awardsy at all. Like, it's about a conspiracy theorist played by Jesse Plemons who kidnaps a CEO played by Emma Stone because he thinks that she is an alien who's going to destroy the Earth. That feels like it could just be one of Lanthimos's crazy weird films that don't register anywhere near the Oscars wavelength. But there are a lot of green flags that make me think that this is going to be an awards thing, despite the fact that it sounds weird on paper. I mean, Poor Things definitely did not sound very awardsy on paper either. And the main thing, the main green flag for me for this film is that Lanthimos and Efthimios Philippou are not writing this film. You know, some are going to look at the writer and say, it's not Tony McNamara, so it's not going to happen because Tony McNamara wrote Lanthimos' only two real big Oscar successes with The Favorite and Poor Things. But all of Lanthimos' other films had either been written by him or co-written with Philippou. So the fact that this is a different writer in general is a great sign for the film. It's written by Will Tracy, who was a co-writer on The Menu and did some writing work on Succession as well. So I think with the plot and with that writer, we could get some really smart, like, class satire in here. So I feel pretty fine about this one. It's also Focus Features. You need to have a Focus Features film in your top 10. They just had Conclave this last year, The Holdovers the year prior. They already have a November 7th release date set for this film, which is, you know, prime awards season release right there. So it seems like Focus is really getting amped up for a Venice premiere and then a big awards push right after. So I am feeling pretty damn good about Begonia despite some hesitancies. Number two, I have Wicked for Good. This is not me saying this is going to be the runner-up for Best Picture. I can see this being like number 8 for Best Picture at the end of the day, but there are just not many movies that I'm very confident about getting a nomination. This is one that I don't have any reason to believe it wouldn't, so that's why I have it this high up. I am just curious to see whether it takes a Dune Part 2 Avatar The Way of Water path, where because it's a sequel, it drops off in nominations and maybe only gets Best Picture and then like production design, costumes, and sound and nothing else, or does it being the final chapter of this story help it get all of those same nominations again? I'm leaning towards the former, but either way, I see this getting a Best Picture nomination. After the Hunt, this is the new Luca Guadagnino movie with Julia Roberts, Andrew Garfield, Io Debris, and all that I've been hearing from test screens is that this thing is great. The script has been getting raves, and people have been saying Julia Roberts is going to be in that Best Actress conversation. I know it's a risk to predict a Luca movie. We've been burned on his films plenty of times before. Last year, we just had Challengers and Queer get blanked. So it's definitely a possibility that this follows that same path and gets a lot of people online loving it, but doesn't register with the Oscars. But I think this one's going to be different, and the main two things are, one, Julia Roberts in the lead role is kind of the in for the older Academy voters, whereas they were never going to latch onto something like Challengers, which was very much more of a young person film Twitter letterbox type of thing. And her presence here gives them a reason to watch this film and love it just for her alone. And also, Luca has said that this film is not going to be anywhere near as sex and desire fueled as his past work. So I am feeling cautiously pretty good about After the Hunt right now. It's got an October release date, so probably a fall festival premiere and a big awards push for some of these key elements. Hamnet, this is something that feels like everything on paper is right there, primed for awards consideration. Directed by Chloe Zhao, the director of Nomadland, starring Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal. It's a period piece, so maybe production design and costume nominations there. It's shot by Lukas Zahl, who did the cinematography for Ida and Cold War and The Zone of Interest, so if this is good, maybe expect him to get a nomination. Everything is just right there. And then you have this tragic, Beatty subject matter here about William Shakespeare's 11-year-old son who dies from the plague, and the film is about Shakespeare's wife Agnes grappling with the trauma of her son's death. And this tragic event is also the backdrop for the creation of Shakespeare's play Hamlet. So on paper, there's just so much to love about this movie. I did see one report that a test screening did not go over well, and this is also focus features just like Begonia, so I don't know how much they're going to end up prioritizing this, because I do think Begonia is probably going to be their main priority, so it's going to be interesting to see how much they push this film. That's why I have it down here at number 6. It used to be really high up because, like I said, everything on paper is right there. I just need to see how Focus handles this film along with having Begonia. Frankenstein, I see a lot of people taking this out of their top 10s or putting it really low, and I don't fully understand. Like, this is Guillermo del Toro after all. Like, yeah, it's Frankenstein. We've seen Frankenstein stories before. I don't really care. Like, Del Toro is just so beloved in the industry. If he could get Nightmare Alley in with only, what, like 3 tech nominations, then I don't see why a Frankenstein movie directed by Guillermo del Toro that probably already has 4 or 5 tech nominations right there, plus it maybe being Netflix's main priority, I don't see why that wouldn't get into Best Picture. Maybe I'm just not seeing something that other people are seeing with this one, but I think all the potential for this thing to be a major awards contender is there. We also have Jay Kelly. This is another Netflix film. You know, they have so many things, it's hard to see what all is going to come as their main priority. So I'm going to put Frankenstein in this one, both in because they seem the most safe for that. This is a Noah Baumbach film. I know people are worried about him being a one-hit wonder at the Academy with Marriage Story, but I don't truly believe that Baumbach can't get back to the Oscars. He just has to have the right story and the right actors, and based on everything I'm seeing with this one feels like it could be that. This film stars George Clooney and Adam Sandler. It's about 2 middle-aged friends who rediscover their youthful spirit during a chaotic weekend facing hilarious mishaps, heartfelt moments, and it forces them to finally grow up. This film has screenplay nomination writing all over it. Like, I just can see this being such a great story that audiences just love. The fact that it stars Clooney and Sandler is a massive green flag. Like, if this hits, we could get some serious narratives going for both of them, especially Sandler in supporting actor. Like, watch out for him, like, being in the win conversation if Jay Kelly is a thing. So I know, like I said, there are hesitancies over Baumbach, but I just feel like this one could be it for him, considering the plot line and the actors involved. And also, Linus Sengren is the cinematographer who does Damien Chazelle's movies, so this is probably going to look freaking amazing as well. So I don't have enough reasons to doubt it to take it out of my top 10. One Battle After Another. This is the Paul Thomas Anderson, Leonardo DiCaprio film, and I know a lot of people are going to have this at number 1 as a placeholder, as a I'm most confident this is getting the nomination because it's PTA and Leo, and I'm not 100% confident on it. Like, I've been hearing so much that this is PTA's Babylon because of how much it is and how overwhelming it is. So I could very well see this just getting shut out at the Oscars just because it's too much for Oscar voters to latch onto. The version that test screened was nearly 3 hours long. It's said to have just a ton of action and chase sequences, dark themes, but with some slapstick humor in it. And the performances I've heard are really good, Sean Penn especially. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I think this is going to be a crazy wild time. I just don't know if it's going to be an Oscars thing at the end of the day. But after all, it's so early in the season. I'm not about to take a PTA and Leo film out of my top 10, but I am looking out for this potentially dropping off. Marty Supreme, this is another one where I'm not quite as high on as other people. I just can see the reality where this gets blanked at the Oscars and just is not an awards thing. But at the moment, the vibes around this thing are pretty damn good. It is A24's most expensive movie, so it would be hard to believe that they wouldn't at least try to push this thing. And it has such a fascinating cast with Timothée Chalamet, Gwyneth Paltrow, Tyler the Creator, Fran Drescher. Like, I'm looking forward to this thing. This thing seems like it's going to be cool as shit. I've heard a lot of Wolf of Wall Street comparisons and a little bit of Uncut Gems. And what gives me pause is that Uncut Gems feeling. If it is too much of that, we know the Safdies have not made Oscar-friendly films. Uncut Gems, after all, didn't get any nominations when it should have. So I, once again, am not going to completely take this out of my top 10, but I am looking for this one to fall off, just like I am with One Battle After Another. The Rivals of Amzia King, this is a film that just premiered at South by Southwest a few days ago, and it feels like this could be just such a crowd pleaser hit that gets in at the Oscars. The only thing keeping me on my toes with this one are the consensus still hasn't really seemed to form over where people are landing on this as a whole. The Letterboxd curve, like, definitely trends positive, but it is pretty weird. And also, it only has a 61 on Metacritic, but that's only with 6 reviews. And I think it had a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes last I checked. So it seems to be kind of all over the place where that consensus is. But as a whole, it really seems like audiences are just eating this damn thing up and loving the shit out of it. This is Matthew McConaughey's first role in 6 years, so I could see a real juicy comeback narrative get going for him. And then Angelina Lookingglass in the supporting actress role here. I have heard nothing but raves, people saying her performance is revelatory, so I am definitely taking her serious in supporting actress. I've been hearing that this film is just a massive, ambitious, stylistic swing. Heard nothing but great things about the great cinematography, the editing, the music, both score and original songs, because with the original songs, characters in this film sing a lot because this is exploring that American South culture, so you're gonna get a lot of that Southern music in this film. So I'm just really looking forward to this thing, and even though that there are those hesitancies over where the critic consensus is gonna lie, it feels like if a good studio picks up this film, this thing could really ride a massive wave of audience passion straight to the Oscars. Like, I could see this playing very well at TIFF, maybe placing there. So I'm looking out for this one just being the audience smash hit of the year. Rounding out my top 10, I have Avatar: Fire and Ash. I do not believe every single one of these films is going to get a Best Picture nomination in this 5+ film series. I wonder if this is the one that finally misses here. We saw The Way of Water had a massive drop in terms of nominations from the previous one. The first one got 9, the second one got 4. Does this one continue that trend and maybe only get sound and visual effects nominations? I don't know. It's hard to completely take it out of my top 10 right now because it's probably going to get $2 billion at the box office, but I am looking out for this one finally being the one that doesn't get into Best Picture. Just missing the cut, I have Catherine Bigelow's upcoming political thriller, which still does not have a title. I had this in my top 10 for a little bit and took it out last second. I see the awards potential right there. Like, I don't see many people at all coming close to predicting this thing, but everything is right there on paper. This is about White House staffers grappling with an impending missile strike on the United States. There's a real time element to this film, so editing nomination right there. We know Bigelow's track record is great with The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. If this is a political war thriller on the level of those, I could very well see this getting a lot of nominations. I know her previous film Detroit didn't come close, but still, her track record is strong enough that you gotta consider it. This one is also Netflix, so it's just hard to say what Netflix is going to prioritize and what they're gonna leave on the back burner because they have 5 films that realistically could get in. I don't know where this falls in terms of priorities, but like I said, I just see the potential there. And one thing that really pushed this up in my rankings is the cast because we know Bigelow's great with actors. Renner's best performance was in The Hurt Locker. Jessica Chastain was probably second for Best Actress for Zero Dark 30. This cast has Idris Elba in the lead role, as well as Rebecca Ferguson and Greta Lee in supporting roles. So maybe if this hits, if Netflix is prioritizing it, we could see some first time nominations for these actors, but I want to see just a little bit more before I put it over the edge and into my top 10. The Life of Chuck, this is last year's TIFF winner, and it feels weird not to put the TIFF winner in my top 10 considering every single one since 2008 have gotten Best Picture nominations, but I just see so many red flags popping up with this movie that are keeping me from doing it. I feel like if this does end up getting the Best Picture nomination, I'm just going to be kicking myself over not putting this in my predictions when it did win TIFF. But like I said, this kind of gives me Sing Sing vibes with its release, not in terms of subject matter of the movie, obviously, but premiering at TIFF one year and then coming out the following year in the summer, not doing well at the box office, fading off, and then the studio prioritizing a bigger festival success. In A24's case, it was The Brutalist last year. In Neon's case, it could be sentimental value. It could be just anything else that they pick up from Cannes. So I just feel like this thing is going to fade out. With it being so much time since TIFF, I wonder if that audience passion just is not going to be there like it was at the festival. And also, the critic reviews are not there for this movie. So if the audience passion dies out, the critics are not going to be trying to save this film. It only has a 64 on Metacritic. So I just think there are so many things working against this movie despite it being the TIFF winner. So that's why I have it out of my predictions. But I can still see it getting that adapted screenplay nomination. So just with that, it has the potential to get into the Best Picture race. I'm not just counting it out this early, but I do just see those red flags which are keeping me from putting in my top 10, even though that it definitely is a possibility. And talking about sentimental value, this is Joachim Trier's next film after Worst Person in the World. This is already acquired by Neon. It is going to Cannes. This would be the most easy film to pick and say that's going to be Neon's Palm winner, and then it gets a Best Picture nomination off of that. And I really want to. I loved Worst Person in the World. The fact that Trier's reteaming with Renata Reinsve in the lead role. This story feels like it could just be excellent. It's about 2 sisters who mourn the loss of their mother, and then their father, a formerly acclaimed film director, comes back into their lives, and in an attempt to reconcile, he offers one of the sisters the lead role in his comeback film, which she denies. It's said to be a really beautiful look on family and just the reconciliatory powers of art. So the subject matter is certainly there, but I feel like it's too easy to predict this thing just being the Neon Can success and bam, Best Picture nomination. Like it feels too obvious. And we know that Cannes is not very predictable in who they go for. So I don't want to try and call the Cannes Palm winner this early on. I tried that last year and it failed miserably. So I'm going to keep this out, but I am definitely keeping my eye on for this being that Palm winner. A film that I had not heard of until a couple days ago and then immediately shot it up in my predictions is Late Fame. This is directed by Kent Jones. This is only his second feature film. His first one, called Diane, released in 2018, and it's a very small film that not many people have seen, but it got a lot of great critic reviews. It has an 86 on Metacritic, so his talent as a director is obviously there, and this film feels like a big step up for him. It stars Willem Dafoe and Greta Lee, and it's about the impact of newfound fame on Willem Dafoe's character, who is the author of a poetry collection that did not get any notice upon initial release, but gained appreciation in the years following among a group of artists, especially one played by Greta Lee, who is eager to gain his attention. And the thing that really shot this up in my predictions for me is the fact that the screenplay is by Sammy Birch, who wrote May December. So knowing this writer's ability to craft such fascinating character stories, Kent Jones's obvious talent in the director's chair, and this cast of Willem Dafoe and Greta Lee, this is a film I am going to be keeping an eye on. I'm really interested to see which studio picks this up, because I could see this being a serious thing with all of these pieces here. Another film many of you probably haven't heard of, called Rental Family. This is a comedy drama starring Brendan Fraser. It's about a Japanese rental company who hires a struggling American actor in Tokyo, and he plays various roles in his clients' lives, embarking on an introspective journey through these unlikely experiences. This feels like it could be a very well-written film, and maybe we could get Brendan Fraser back in the Oscar race here. And another one that I think is really interesting is Takahiro Hira in a supporting actor role. He just got an Emmy nomination for Shogun this last year. Maybe this film, if it's good, could get him that Oscar nomination as well. This is a Searchlight film, which is why I have it so high up, because looking at their slate, this would be my best guess for their main priority. However, if I do go all the way and put this into my top 10, I would feel like it's only because it's a Searchlight film and not because of anything I've heard about the film. So I need to hear more about this before I fully put it in my top 10, but because it is Searchlight, if this does end up being their main priority, definitely going to be a thing. Bam! Surprise costume change. Bet you weren't expecting that. Anyways, I wanted to redo what I was saying about the Smashing Machine because I want to give it more props than I was when I first recorded this video. This is obviously the film where Dwayne Johnson is finally going to try to act. He is playing a real-life MMA fighter, Mark Kerr. This story, Kerr's story, is supposed to be really tumultuous and tragic and everything. If Johnson can actually act, I can see this having so much where he can be so showy in this role with how tragic Kerr's story is. I do worry about Oscar voters looking at this film and saying, oh, he's just playing a fighter, he's not actually acting out of the box. But I do think there will probably be enough for him to do in this film to where, like I said, if he can actually act, he could really knock it out of the park and people could really be blown away. We also have Emily Blunt here in a supporting role, so maybe she can get another nomination. The makeup just in that one image, I would probably expect that to get a nomination. And because it is a sports biopic, maybe an editing nomination there too. So I'm not going to predict it at the moment because I'm leaning towards Marty Supreme being A24's priority. And, you know, it is hard to pick a Dwayne Johnson-led film to actually get a Best Picture nomination, but the pieces are in place where if they do really knock this out of the park and Benny Safdie gets a great performance from The Rock, we could see this actually break in. And, maybe we go from one Safdie Brothers movie to this Safdie Brothers movie as A24's priority then. Like I said, not going to predict it yet, but the pieces are in place for this to actually be a success. Ann Lee, this is directed by Mona Fastvold, Brady Corbet's wife, and Fastvold and Corbet are co-writing the script just like they did on The Brutalist. This is a really fascinating looking film to me. It stars Amanda Seyfried in the lead role of religious leader Ann Lee, who founded the Shaker movement in the 1770s. Lee's followers deemed her the female Jesus Christ and worshipped her through song and dance. And because of that song and dance part there, this is also going to be a musical biopic of this woman, Ann Lee. So this feels like this could just be such an ambitious stylistic swing, just like The Brutalist was, and just like all of Fastvold and Corbet's films. I don't want to predict it quite yet because ultimately Fastvold and Corbet both are not interested in making films just for awards recognition. They want to make the films that they want to make, and they tend to be very divisive filmmakers, so I don't want to just predict every Mona Fastvold, every Brady Corbet film from here to the end of time just because of their success on The Brutalist. But there is a lot here to consider. If this film does hit, I could see a big nomination haul. I mean, the period setting, you got some text right there. Seyfried, I think this is going to be a massive acting showcase for her. I could see her getting a Best Actress nomination without this film in Best Picture. And the music, both the score and the original songs, are done by Daniel Blumberg, who obviously composed The Brutalist. So there's a lot to like with this one. I just want to hold off for now on predicting another Mona Fastvold film, another Brady Corbet film, but this has a Venice premiere. If it hits at Venice like The Brutalist did, I can see this absolutely being an awards thing like that film was. Sacrifice, this is directed by Romain Gavras, the son of legendary filmmaker Costa Gavras, and this is a satire about a character played by Anya Taylor-Joy, whose name is Joan. She can hear a prophecy about the Earth's fiery reckoning, so her and her disciples go to a massive charity gala and kidnap 3 people and plan to sacrifice them to save humanity. One is an actor looking for redemption, played by Chris Evans, the richest man in the world, played by Vincent Cassel, and a random unlucky woman. Chris Evans' character specifically has to be faced with the question of what he would sacrifice to save humanity. So I can see this being such a smartly written satire with some biting social commentary here, and we know the Oscars love a good satire from time to time, so I am definitely keeping my eye on this. This could just end up being nothing, but there is a lot to be intrigued about with this one, so this is another film where I am eagerly anticipating which studio picks this up, because if it's a good one, I could see a good push for this film. Mother Mary, this is from the director of The Green Knight. It stars Anne Hathaway and Michaela Cole. The plot description we have is that it's an epic pop melodrama about an iconic musician and her relationship with a fashion designer. Anne Hathaway is going to be playing the musician, and Michaela Cole will be playing the fashion designer. I had this really high in my predictions for a while. I mean, I can just see the acting being there. David Lowery is a director I would love to see break through in the vein of Sean Baker. And the text, I mean, the cinematography and the costumes look like they're right there in the one image that they've released from this film. So I think this could happen, but like, this film also just gives me the vibes of like Challengers, where it's something that young people, film Twitter, Letterboxd absolutely adore, say it's one of the best films of the year, but just doesn't touch the Oscars. I mean, even down to Charlie XCX and Jack Antonoff doing the music for this one, it just feels like it's in that prime Challengers placement here, where we are going to love it, but it just won't be recognized by the Oscars. But I do still have hope because there are a lot of elements here that I could see getting that recognition. The Michael Jackson biopic, look, I'm just not convinced this thing's coming out this year. With the fact that they're having to reshoot the entire third act and they're using the accusations against Jackson as a framing device for the entire movie, like, this thing just feels like it's gonna have controversy galore, and maybe that gets in the way of the Oscars embracing this like they normally do with biopics. So I'm not going to predict this right now. Obviously, there's a chance the Oscars could just overlook all of that and nominate it anyways, but I am feeling really hesitant about this film as a whole. The Ballad of a Small Player, directed by Edward Berger, just fresh off of Conclave with another film. This stars Colin Farrell in the lead role of a gambler who has to go into hiding because his past and his debts catch up with him. This is said to be a psychological thriller. Psychological thrillers don't tend to be the Oscars' cup of tea, so even though that it is Edward Berger, I am a little hesitant on predicting it. Also, it's Netflix. Like, this would be, my guess right now, their fourth priority. It could obviously be higher, but like, it's just so hard to predict more than one or two Netflix films with how much they're juggling this year. Also, people who have read the book have said that it's just good. It's not a real page turner like Conclave was, and the writer of this film doesn't have as strong of a track record as Conclave's writer. It's not as promising. He hasn't written awards contenders before. So I am putting this lower than I think most people will, just because I'm hesitant about how good this thing is actually going to turn out and how much of an Oscars type of film this will be. The Lost Bus, this is another Matthew McConaughey film, so if The Rivals of Amzia King doesn't hit, maybe this one takes that place as the McConaughey comeback. This is directed by Paul Greengrass. It is about the real-life 2018 California campfire, which is the most deadly wildfire in American history, I believe. So California wildfire, this could hit home with some of the Americans in the Academy. And McConaughey plays a bus driver who has to navigate a bus full of kids and their teacher through these fires to safety. So if this is a survival thriller, kind of on the level of a Captain Phillips, which Greengrass also directed, I could see this getting that recognition, maybe an acting nomination, maybe editing and sound or something like that. But this is also Apple, and I need to see more about this because with it being an Apple film, I'm not entirely confident on it, but it does feel like this is a film that could definitely hit home with the Americans in the Academy, like I said. The History of Sound, this is a gay love story starring Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor about two men in 1919 who go and record the voices and folk songs of American soldiers and American countrymen in World War I. So this film, it feels like it's probably going to be that queer, all of us strangers type of LGBTQ film that a lot of people online love but never comes close to the Oscars. However, with this having the backdrop of World War I, this could be a little bit baitier and therefore actually get the awards recognition. So I'm skeptical, but I do have hope that maybe this could actually hit. Orphan, directed by Laszlo Nemes. This is the director of Son of Saul, which won Best International Feature back in 2015-2016. His follow-up to that, Sunset, I believe it was called, flopped, didn't get anywhere near that same recognition or acclaim, so it'll be interesting to see if Orphan can recapture some of that brilliance that Son of Saul had. This is about a 12-year-old boy in 1957 Budapest after the Hungarian uprising of 1956. His mother tells him stories about his father who disappeared during the revolution, and then one day a random stranger who the boy has never met before shows up at their door claiming to be his father. So this feels like it could be a really Beatty type of subject matter here with this kid, with this period setting, and it feels like it could be really tragic. So I'm definitely going to look out for this one maybe being one of the big international successes of the year, and hopefully, if it is, it could break into the Best Picture conversation, unlike Son of Saul. The Roses, this is a black comedy drama film with Olivia Colman and Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm really interested in their performances in this film. The script is being written by Tony McNamara, which is a massive green flag. This is Searchlight. I would say this is so obviously going to be their priority with this cast, the studio, the writer for it, but it's directed by Jay Roach, who's like best film like awards recognition wise was Bombshell, which only has like a 3.1 on Letterboxd. So Jay Roach does not give me much to hope for, really. That's not the greatest sign as a director, and that's why I'm not having this higher up in my predictions, just because I can't imagine Searchlight's going to end up prioritizing a film directed by Jay Roach for the Oscars. So that's where my hesitancies lie with that. Maybe the actors and the script are enough to carry the film on their backs into the awards race, though. So I'm still looking out for it. Like, maybe this could be a big hit at Toronto. If it is, I'll consider it. For now, though, I'm going to lean towards saying no, but maybe. The Disappearance of Joseph Mengele. This is about Nazi doctor Joseph Mengele, who was deemed the angel of death of Auschwitz. He experimented on and tortured thousands of Auschwitz prisoners. After World War II, he fled to South America. He first went to Argentina, then Paraguay, then Brazil, where he later died. This is directed by Kirill Serebrennikov. His films have had the potential to be awardsy, but they just haven't quite broken through. So maybe with this subject matter, he is finally able to break into that level of acclaim. This film is going to Cannes, so if it is able to win a major award, I may have to start predicting this one. I'm really interested in this one and seeing where the story goes with Mengele in South America. I know the book that this is based on includes the 1985 mock trial of Joseph Mengele, where people who were victims of him got to speak up and speak about him at this mock trial. So if they include that in the movie, maybe a real like Beatty emotional catharsis at the end there. So there's a lot about this film that is quite intriguing to me, and that's why I have it up as high as I do here. Highest to lowest, this is Spike Lee's remake or reinterpretation, as he says, of Akira Kurosawa's classic High and Low. Many will bring up Old Boy and just write this off immediately, but I have a little bit more faith. The book that Kurosawa's film is based off of is set in the United States, and it's very much more in Spike Lee's wheelhouse, with it being a crime movie. It's about a wealthy man who has to decide whether to use his money on a personal ambition or saving the life of a kidnapped child. I don't know how strictly this film will follow that plot of the book, but either way, it's going to be about a wealthy man having to grapple with something related to that. So I'm really interested to see what Spike does with this film. Overall, though, even though that I am personally really excited for this to see what he can do, I'm going to say no for now, but maybe Spike just knocks it out of the park. No Other Choice, this is the new Park Chan-wook film. It's about a man who's been fired from a position he's held for 25 years, and in order to gain employment, he devises a plan to become a serial killer and start killing off the competition. Now, after Decision to Leave couldn't even get an international feature nomination, I think it's wishful thinking to think that this film is going to get into Best Picture. I mean, a serial killer thriller doesn't exactly ring Oscars to me, but it is Park Chan-wook. I have a sliver of hope. I at least think I'm probably going to love the shit out of this one, so I'm looking forward to this. I want it to happen, but I don't really think it will. Die My Love, starring Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson. This is Lynn Ramsey's new film. I think, in the vein of Park Chan-wook's film, it's probably hope-dicting if you have this in your top 10. Like, Lynn Ramsey makes films about these psychologically tortured women that just are not the Oscars' speed, so I don't really think this is going to end up happening, but I guess if Jennifer Lawrence just knocks it out of the park with her performance, which I think she probably will, maybe with her being such a big star, Robert Pattinson as well, maybe the actors can carry this Lynn Ramsey film into that awards recognition, but I don't know. I'm not going to predict a Lynn Ramsey film this early on in the year. Deliver Me From Nowhere, this is the Bruce Springsteen biopic. I don't have much faith in this one because the director is Scott Cooper. Dude is not an awards director. Like, he's just not. His biggest success was Crazy Heart, which was his first film, which got Jeff Bridges a Best Actor win without the film being in Best Picture. So maybe at best, Deliver Me From Nowhere is a Crazy Heart situation, not getting a win, but getting Jeremy Allen White and Jeremy Strong acting nominations. Like, that's just the ceiling I see at the moment, but I guess if they get nominations, it's possible. Nouvelle Vague, blame Google Translate if that pronunciation is wrong. This is directed by Richard Linklater. It's all in French. It's shot in black and white and in a 4:3 aspect ratio. It's about the production of Jean-Luc Godard's film Breathless and all about the French New Wave movement. And Linklater has said he wanted this film to feel like a French New Wave film. So I am really interested in this one. This feels like such an intriguing option and possibility. It's probably going to get a Cannes premiere. It's probably not going to be anything, but there's enough here that I'm keeping an eye on this for sure. Train Dreams, this is the film from Sundance that most people agreed would probably be the biggest awards contender out of all the films there. I am putting it pretty low on this list because, once again, this is also Netflix. This is like film number 5 out of 5 that they could potentially push for awards. And it just feels so small that I doubt this takes priority for Netflix over stuff like Frankenstein or the Catherine Bigelow film or the Noah Baumbach film. So we know what being deprioritized does to Netflix films. I mean, this could just very well be a His Three Daughters situation where it deserves far more recognition than it ends up getting. I can see a lot of people thinking that this deserves director, screenplay, acting, cinematography, score nominations, but it just never materializes because Netflix is too busy pushing so many films at once. Sorry Baby, this is another Sundance film. I have seen this one. It is still my favorite film of the year so far and will end up being in my top 10 by the end of the year. I really loved this film, but when I saw it, I didn't really get Oscars vibes. It just feels too small once again, and A24 also has a pretty stacked slate, so this probably isn't going to take priority over some of these other films, but it does have an 88 on Metacritic, so if critic groups at the end of the year start going out for Sorry Baby, maybe this could get a second wind and end up becoming an Oscars contender. I would love to see it get a screenplay and actress nomination. It would be so well deserved. I don't think it's going to happen at the moment, but I suppose it could if those critics groups do really start to prop it up. F1, this is the racing movie from the director of Top Gun Maverick with Brad Pitt. I don't really know what to feel about this one. The trailer just came out a couple days ago, and I thought overall it's probably going to kick ass in IMAX because that sounds going to be great, but I really struggle to see this being more than just a couple below the line categories. Like, with this film coming out at the end of June, the week before Jurassic World, like, this is not going to have months to itself at the box office like Top Gun Maverick did to become that blockbuster phenomenon that got into Best Picture. So I struggle to see F1 really carving its own path like Maverick did. The Way of the Wind, this is Terrence Malick's film about several chapters in the life of Jesus. This is probably my most anticipated film of the year. I love Terrence Malick, but I don't know if this is coming out this year. We've been getting mixed reports on whether it is or isn't, so I guess we'll see when the final Cannes lineup releases in, I don't know what, like a month? I don't know when it releases, so we'll see, but either way, I think this is probably going to need like a Palm win to get awards recognition because Malick is so hit or miss with the Oscars, really only hitting with The Tree of Life, which won the Palm, and The Thin Red Line. So I don't know if then this ends up being an Oscars thing, even if it does release this year. But hey, I'm looking forward to it. Alpha, directed by Julia Ducournau. I know a lot of people are probably going to start predicting this just because The Substance did well this year. They want to see another body horror film in there. Let's be real, genre bias is still a thing. It requires a lot for horror movies to get into the Oscars. They have to really hit hard in the cultural zeitgeist. And if Ducournau's past film, Titan or Titan, however you pronounce it, couldn't do that with winning the Palm, then I struggle to believe Alpha does that. Like, Alpha would need to also win the Palm. Ducournau would need to do it back to back for me to think that this even has a chance. So, you know, if Cannes rolls around and this wins, maybe I'll start predicting it, but even then, I would probably be hesitant. Bam! Another surprise costume change just to keep you on your toes at the end of this video. I am going to cut my predictions right there. There are still a lot more films that I am keeping an eye out on, so I'm going to have another big list on the side of the screen here. And the reason why I'm not going over these individually is because, one, I've just kind of gone on for a while at this point and don't want to keep you. And also, some of these I'm just less confident in. Some of them I just don't have enough to talk about for a minute or two at a time. So because of that, if you are predicting one of the films on the side and you were wondering where it is, I'm still keeping an eye out on it. So what did you think about my predictions? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Let me know your way too early Best Picture predictions if you have any. And like I said at the start of this video, this is ultimately just for fun. I'm gonna get half this shit wrong at the end of the day. We still have a year to go. So much is gonna change as this year goes on. So we'll see how much of this ends up being accurate. I'm hoping for, like I said, 4 or 5 out of 10. That would be just wonderful. So if you liked what you saw here today and you would like to see more, subscribe to follow the odyssey that is Oscar season.